The reason why I decided to do it was because I had a fear of speaking in public. So that was one, I identified a limiting belief in myself. And for me to help other people.
Welcome to the Raw and Real podcast. Are you dreaming of changing your life through opening a business? Or are you curious what obstacles entrepreneurs had to overcome on their journey? Then you're in the right place. My name is Agnes Pillik and I'm your host. Hey, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It would really mean a lot to me if you would join my Facebook group Raw and Real Talks, that I can get to know you better and interact more with you on a personal level. So I hope to see you there. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real. Today's guest on the show is Krystyna Lennon. She's a world-renowned executive and leadership development coach, a television personality, hypnotist, author, and keynote speaker. For over 20 years, she has also worked as an executive coach and hypnotist to help professionals remove self-sabotage, negative subconscious programming, and anxiety to ensure that they reach their wealth and success they want. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. I'm really excited to talk to you and dive into your story. So I was wondering, maybe you can first tell us a little bit about how your life looked like before you became a hypnotist and world-renowned person.
Yeah, my life didn't look too great before I became a hypnotist. I sort of did my studies and finished my studies around 1999, so probably before you were born. And never really did anything with it. I sort of studied all sorts of things and didn't do much with it. I sort of helped people as a bit of a side hustle before there was any such thing as a side hustle. And then in around about 2015, I had an injury in my back, which meant I couldn't continue doing the job I was doing. And I decided then that I wanted to make coaching and transforming people's lives my everyday work.
And what were you doing before?
Oh, you name it. I owned bars. I was like, gosh, I had businesses. I did absolutely all sorts of different things. But none were really my passion. It's always been in the back of my mind to help people sort of become the best version of themselves, because I'd done a lot of work on myself, but I still hadn't got to the point where I was doing what I should be doing because of those, I didn't quite see myself as that kind of person. My self-image wasn't sort of in alignment with what I wanted to do, which just prevented me from taking the action necessary. So I did a lot of work on myself over a year's period, and I used my own kind of formula that I put together to help people develop personally. I used my own formula on myself to see if I could become a stage hypnotist. And that worked better than I could have imagined. And that sort of kicked off my career, really.
And what was the first time you came across hypnotherapy?
I was pregnant on my second child, and I knew I was going to have a huge baby. And I was absolutely terrified. And having one already, that was bad enough, but I knew how big this one was, and I was terrified. So a stage hypnotist said he could help me with the birth, which sort of confused me at first. I was like, okay. But he gave me a session that I would sort of relax between contractions, and it sort of took my mind out of the room. So it felt like I wasn't even really present, for the painful bits. And it absolutely blew my mind. I'd already done like psychotherapy, psychology, but it was like, wow, I've got to do this. So I then went on to study hypnosis or hypnotherapy.
And what has it really done for your life? Like, in what way has it really influenced your life?
Wow, in what way? In every way. Hypnosis is at the heart of everything I do, I suppose. It's taught me, I suppose the NLP side of it, the hypnosis without trance, I learned that many, many years ago. But it's completely changed my life. It's what I do every day. I don't use hypnosis every day with clients, but I use it with most. But it's transformed me. It's helped my children. It's helped my family. It's, helped my clients. So it's had a huge effect.
Can you give us one of the examples that you really felt a big change and that influenced your life for the positive and your own behavior?
I suppose removing anxiety for me. I used to have really bad panic attacks and anxiety. I think if I hadn't have done something about it, I probably would have been agoraphobic, or I definitely wouldn't have done any of the things I've done up to date. But yeah, I suppose that the biggest effect would be on anxiety and procrastination. They were the two areas that really sort of plagued me. And once I dealt with those, then my life's changed. But I suppose I've had other things that have been more instant that I've had hypnosis for. Like when I had a session for passing my driving test, one of the triggers was as soon as you click your seatbelt, I'd become confident. I would remember everything. I'd be calm. And when I got to the test center, I undid my seatbelt and my legs went wobbly. I could barely stand. And it was like in that moment, I was like, whoa, this is crazy powerful. But it wasn't obviously just passing my driving test. You can argue whether that would have happened without the hypnosis or not. But just that little test of undoing my seatbelt was like, wow.
I can imagine. And the anxiety, what you mentioned before. So, how did the process look like for you to get over it? And what would you tell someone who is currently suffering from anxiety and maybe these panic attacks?
I suppose what you need to realize, I studied a lot about anxiety because I wanted to get better. Back when I was suffering anxiety, you had the option of medication, drugs from the doctor, and that was it. And I mean, at the time, they didn't even really understand what anxiety was. I was going for chest scans and all sorts. And I lost my job for it, and my employers didn't understand. So it really wasn't like it is now. But I started studying anxiety, and what I realized was that as soon as you have a thought, you release hormones into your nervous system, and anxiety is just either adrenaline or cortisol. So as soon as you have a thought, if it's a catastrophizing thought, like, oh my God, this terrible event's going to happen, that actually probably isn't. As soon as you make it into that terrible situation by overthinking, you release adrenaline. And adrenaline gives you palpitations, sweaty hands, it makes you irritable, it makes you exhausted, it makes you lay awake at night thinking, and it gives you all these horrible symptoms that we now call anxiety. So I figured that if you don't have the thought that creates the adrenaline, the chemical release of adrenaline, then you won't have the symptoms. So I really studied what the thoughts I am having that are making me feel anxious, and literally used hypnosis to delete them and think of something else. So whenever I'd start to think a negative thought or something that caused anxiety, I'd just say delete, and that's like a pattern interrupt. And then I'd replace it with something that released a different chemicals like dopamine. Like I'd be like, instead of oh my God, I'm going to speak and I might forget what I'm saying, delete that, and I'd replace it with, I am going to connect, I am going to be confident, calm, engaging, and those things that make me feel better. And once you no longer have the adrenaline just dumping into your system constantly, you have different results.
And how do you manage really to delete it? And like, how does the process really work then?
Because under hypnosis, as soon as you catch yourself starting to say or as soon as if you start to feel the slightest bit of anxiety coming in, you know that you're thinking. Sometimes we're not aware of our thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start to feel the slightest bit of anxiety, delete and then think of something that releases endorphins. So think of something funny that makes you laugh, because that's going to release endorphins, or dopamine, sorry. And it's that kind of process, really. But with hypnosis, it just happens automatically. And some people just wake up and the best kind of result I get from it is people instantly just feel better and they don't ever have those negative thoughts again. The worst end of the scale is that they sort of start to say the statement and then go, oh, not supposed to be saying that, delete and replace it. And it takes a little bit of effort and they get there. But as I said, I've got about a 99% success rate, I think, at the minute with anxiety. So it's pretty effective.
So is it then that you really have to first become aware of it and then watch your own behavior, and then actively, when you think about it, every time it comes up, to say that one phrase and say something positive, that over time a different connection is formed?
Yeah, that would be the case if you didn't have hypnosis. So that's the slow route, to sort of every time you sort of you have to acknowledge. The really important part is acknowledging your negative language and statements and stories that you tell yourself. Like, I can't do this, or this will happen, or I find it, I get really scared when this happens. And in some cases, it can just be like, oh, why bother? I don't want to do that. It's all these little statements that you're constantly releasing hormones, either positive or negative. So if you could constantly run every statement, every thought you think through a filter of, is this going to release positive or negative? That would be perfect. But that takes a lot of effort. So I just use hypnosis. It happens at a subconscious level and you're not even consciously aware of it. It's just you wake up and the thoughts no longer come into your mind, those intrusive thoughts that cause the anxiety, the adrenaline.
And can you tell us how you hypnotize someone?
How you hypnotize someone? If I could do that in this sort of half an hour, it would, or hour, whatever it is, it would be something. It's something that takes quite a long time. But hypnosis is basically, at a basic level, you have conscious and subconscious awareness. So when you are driving to work, if you drive, you're on your way to work, you arrive at your destination and you have no idea how you got there, or you might be walking down the street. You weren't consciously aware of any of the journey. You were in a trance. You were in that kind of state. And you go through that state at least twice a day. First thing on the morning when you wake up, and last thing at night as you go to sleep. You go through what we call a theta stage, where your conscious mind is somewhere and your subconscious mind, your conscious mind is thinking about something else. And that gives free access to your subconscious mind, where everything's stored, your kind of supercomputer. So when I hypnotize people, my aim is to get their conscious mind elsewhere. Just like, access to the person that's driving the car when you're thinking about cooking your dinner. So I want access to the robot. And once I do that by taking you off to a beach or somewhere fun and getting you to imagine doing something fun, then your conscious mind is somewhere else. And I can generally tell you're there with your rapid eye movement. As soon as I see the breathing relax and the rapid eye movement, I know you've left the building, and then I can speak to your subconscious state or mind, however you want to word it.
Okay, that sounds really exciting.
Yep.
And I heard you saying before that we're constantly hypnotized by media and marketing companies. So how can we notice these external influences? first of all?
Every word you hear, every movie you watch, every news broadcast is influencing you. So everything your parents say to you, your colleagues, your friends, everything, we are constantly, because when I say we go in and out of a theta state at least twice a day, we're actually in and out of theta state up to 95% of the day. So that's 95% of your day. You're leaving your brain wide open to, soak up information like a sponge. And for instance, the coronavirus, as soon as that hit, I was getting people contacting me saying they were nervous, they were anxious all the time because they're constantly watching the media. So they're constantly in a sort of state of high alert. And they think it's bigger than it actually is. So they feel absolutely terrified. And the same can be said about anything, really. If you are constantly in an environment that's enriching, that promotes you, that makes you feel that money is abundant and opportunity is abundant, then you will get influenced by that environment. So we are constantly influenced by everything around us. So I think the key is you can't sort of protect yourself from it as much. Choose the source of influence. So really consider carefully who you spend your time with, who you listen to, the groups, on social media, who do you follow, what kind of influence are they having in your lives, and the media platforms that you choose to follow, because they 100% will influence you. There's none of us that are immune to it. So it's a case of choosing your influences very carefully.
And are there certain things we can do besides, consciously choosing the sites we watch and the people we talk to shield ourselves a little bit and take back control?
I always say, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, and when you are an entrepreneur or a business person or salesperson, you constantly, or a CEO, you constantly have to stay in a peak state to manage your business properly. And you can go and visit your gran, and your gran's sort of, why haven't you got a proper job yet? And you end up leaving there feeling negative, and people can steal your power all the time with their negative influence. And most gurus suggest that you don't spend your time with these people, but that's ridiculous. You can't not see your parents or not see your gran, or just get new rich friends because your old friends just don't cut it anymore. It's the most ridiculous thing. So what I always advise is steer away from talking about business. If that's something that they seem to dog you down on, steer away from that subject. If they ask you how's business going, great, thank you. Change the subject so that they can't dog you down in those situations. You can control the conversation. Ask questions about them, get them talking about them so they're not, really making you feel bad. And if the subject goes in the area that you didn't want it to go, so if they start talking about your business, instead of trying to argue or anything else while they're talking, just smile, nod, and in your mind, again, just deflect the suggestion by just saying delete, delete, delete. Because if you say delete while they are saying it, your subconscious mind isn't going to take it on board. So you can say whatever you want. You could say, this is rubbish, what a load of nonsense, whatever, in your mind while you're just smiling, nodding.
So you would then not actively listen, but while they are talking, you would say all the time in your head, delete, delete, delete.
Yeah. I've been in those situations where, something somebody might say to me might trigger me to feel really angry, or, and I don't want to feel like that. So I won't allow myself that emotional connection to their words. So, and family members, some of the worst, we are who they saw us when we were kids, or, you know, especially parents. So they don't see we've got any power in this world or can do anything, or why anybody would want to listen to us. But so they can be the worst sort of perpetrators. So yeah, is it worth you getting angry and arguing? No. If you can not talk about it, don't talk about it. If you have to talk about it, yeah, in your mind, smiling, delete, 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 and just let it go over your head. Don't have an emotional reaction to it. Because once you have an emotional reaction to it, that is stored at, you know, it gets manifested at a deeper level once you have that emotional sort of connection.
I think that situation that you mentioned is also very common for entrepreneurs that are starting out and they're confronted with a family where everyone is a traditional employee and they hear a lot of negativity or just like doubts from their surrounding. And then I can imagine it's very hard also to go on, and it does affect you emotionally because again, those are very close people surrounding you, and like you want them to see you in a good way, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So when that emotion comes up and that like tears you down, what would you suggest that someone should do?
It's people react very differently to that, because again, it's how you react to the stimulus rather than the stimulus itself. So for instance, you know, when I had the crazy idea I was going to become a stage hypnotist with a dog that hypnotized people, do you think people weren't going, excuse me, are you mad? This is never going to work. What on earth? Have you lost your mind? I heard that day in, day out. And in my mind, all I was saying is, I'll show you. I will show you how this is going to go down. And it kind of fueled me on. But for some people, it destroys them. It depends on your response. So you can decide in advance. So if you know that you're going to your parents, you're about to tell them, you know, you're going on this crazy, you know, new business venture, and you know that their reaction is going to be, what on earth are you doing? Why did you even bother going to school? Da, 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 da. Then in your mind, you can decide in advance how you will respond to that. I know this is going to happen, and whatever they say is going to fuel me even further. It's going to be the fire under me that makes me prove to them I can succeed. And then everything they say in a negative way, it will be a positive, because you'll be like, it's like, you know, using reverse psychology on yourself. So you just decide in advance that that's how you're going to deal with it.
When you decided to become a stage hypnotist, so how long did it take for you from the decision and like hearing all of that negativity until it all worked out? And maybe can you give us an overview of the step backs that you had, or like moments that really made you doubt about that plan?
It was, I mean, the reason why I decided to do it was because I had a fear of speaking in public. So that was one, I identified a limiting belief in myself. And for me to help other people, I have to be able to challenge myself. So one of my worst fear was a limiting belief. My worst limiting belief was a fear of public speaking, which is why I decided to become a stage hypnotist. I'd obviously already trained in hypnotherapy, so it's quite easy to, you know, move over to stage hypnosis. I just needed the confidence and, you know, to be able to have the balls to go out there and do it. So I decided on the Friday. On the Monday, I made calls. It was kind of, a friend gave me his old show. He already had a show. He had old clients, but he'd just retired. So I kind of had it all set up ready. So I just rang round, and it was within 6 weeks, I had 6 shows booked. And when I started, within a month, my first show was advertised at a university and the media picked up on it. They came to film my first show. My second show was filmed for German TV, and my third show was on Britain's Got Talent. And within, did it for 4 years, and last year I was named the world's best hypnotist. And in that period of 4 years, I've done 44 TV shows. So, and the struggles, yeah, there's been many struggles. I was completely focused on it working. So I can't say that there were many struggles in that sense. Like, I knew it was going to happen. I saw the vision. The only struggles I'd say was traveling with a dog, and I was new to stage hypnosis. I had to not only go on TV doing stage hypnosis, I also had to do it where they believed they were being hypnotized by a dog, and in a different country where I don't know the culture and the language, through an interpreter. So I really dived in at the deep end. But that made me a better hypnotist. So then when I get somebody, in my office for me to get rid of procrastination or to install discipline, and they say, "Oh, I don't think I can be hypnotized," it's like, look, you are going to be so easy compared to what I've done. This is going to be really easy. So yeah, I just had it really clear in my mind what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And you also wrote a book about the mindset you need in order to become a successful entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you tell someone who's currently struggling and feeling stuck?
Everybody talks about, some people believe in the law of attraction, some, faith, whatever you want to call it. There is huge power in belief. I mean, huge power. If you believe something to be true, then the odds are it will be true. So if you can I think what people have difficulty is getting to the point where they believe it. Once they are there, you hear everybody that has done anything phenomenal in their life, you will hear them speak about it, and you will hear them say, "I imagined it, I could see it, I knew it was going to happen." The problem is, how on earth do you get there?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a really tricky road. And that was my kind of where I really struggled, was like, how do I get to the point where I really believe something's going to happen? And there's just a step-by-step process. There was an experiment done, and they took 2 control groups, and the first control group, they got them to imagine, the first control group, they showed them a yellow rectangle, and they put them in a PET scanner, which is like an MRI, but with more detail, simplifying it. And then they took the second group, and they were hypnotized to imagine a yellow rectangle. And in both groups, they found that the same part of the brain lit up with activity. Therefore, that proved that not only does hypnosis work, but even better than that, we can simulate a reality and trick our brain into believing it's real. And if you understand how your brain works, our brain tries to automate everything. It tries to make routines, because the brain takes up about 20% of our overall energy, which is an awful lot. If we were to make a decision on everything we did every day, we would, what we're going to have for breakfast, all those decisions, we would be exhausted. So the brain kind of groups things into like routines, like when you get up, you do this, this, this. And that's why it can drive us to work without any conscious thought. So to save energy, it gives us this routine that we can, that we follow easily without conscious thought. And what our brain is doing, it's trying to keep things similar. So it wants everything to be the same, similar, because that's safe. So if you can trick your brain into believing something is real, it will start to think that is your normal. So for instance, if you want to be confident, if you imagine yourself being confident over and over again, more than you're imagining yourself being anxious, so it needs to be, we need to change the balance. If you imagine yourself being confident, your brain will start to think that's real and will start to just move you towards that. It'll be thinking, oh, this is the default, this is what we are, and that's what it moves you towards. Because our brain has difficulty sort of differentiating between real and imagined. Like when you watch a movie and it's a scary movie and you're like, oh my God, get the key in the lock, get the key in the lock. You sort of sat on the edge of your seat, frantic. And then it ends and you're like, whew. And it's though you went through the anxiety. Or a sad movie, someone dies and you sat there like, afterwards. It's an all day, you feel exhausted from being, from crying. You go, it's a simulation, but your brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. It believes that's happened in your real life. That's why you go through the same emotions. So if you can picture that thing happening clearly and do it over and over again, eventually you will, have an event that happens that reaffirms it. And before you know it, it's a belief. And then the magic happens.
So what you mentioned with the confidence is a very internal thing. So what about if we take an example as an entrepreneur and, for example, you want to get more clients? Because that's a more external thing, right?
Yeah.
So should you then imagine in your brain, for example, that you already have conversations with people? How would you approach it?
Yeah, if that is your aim, to get lots more clients, then you need to imagine that over and over again. Because what happens is, if at some level you don't believe that you can get those clients, you might not take the action required, you might not be convincing enough, you might not be giving off the right vibe. There's so many different things you can do to put somebody off from becoming a client that, I might go live every day in front of millions of people, but if I don't truly believe I can, I can get all these clients, something about me is going to put them off. My mannerisms, I'm not going to come across quite as confident. Something about me is going to say to everybody, no, you need to give off that confidence. There's so many factors, so many things that can influence it.
And how often would you suggest to do this visualization, and how long should it be?
You need as I say, the most suggestible time of day is first thing in the morning, last thing at night. So 100% then. If I'm looking to make, whenever I'm looking to level up to the next level, it's like, right, I have to make, this new figure in my mind believable. If you've been earning £30,000 and you say, I want to earn 1 million, you don't know how many zeros are in 1 million. You're not sure where the comma goes. It's difficult for you to imagine. And so you need to write it down. You need to, you need to know how to spell it, how many zeros there are in it. You need to make it real. So for instance, a lot of people talk about vision boards, saying that is the great way to program your subconscious mind. I say nonsense. It's a flat picture that I'd say it would only affect 1% of people. So if I have a beautiful home on my vision board, yeah, I can either put a picture of a beautiful home on my vision board. Once my mind's seen it a couple of times, it'll ignore it because it's there all the time, and that's that. However, if I start to make that, I need to make it real. So I can find out how much it costs. I can find out what the mortgage repayments will be. I can find out what the deposit would be. I can find out how many rooms it has. I can find out what the running costs are. I can go visit it. I can make it real. I can go and sit in the house that I want and sit around and say to myself, this is my new home. This is my home. I can imagine, I can drive to it and imagine myself, driving in, the electric gates, obviously, opening. If you make it real, then your subconscious mind is going to have a much bigger effect than a flat picture on your wall that you ignore. Same with a car, sit in a Ferrari if that's what you want, hear the engine, feel the vibration of the engine, smell the leather, know, the manual, know how much it costs to service, know everything about it. So when you talk about a Ferrari, it feels more attainable. You know what it feels like to be in one. It's more real to you. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. Totally understand that. Thanks for the explanation. And here's to have a last key takeaway, a personal insight that helped you grow that you would like to share.
A personal insight that helped me grow. I suppose, I think what most people don't really realize about personal development is that the first stage is self-awareness. So in anyone's personal development journey, you need to know where you are now. You need to know what motivates you. You need to know, some people don't realize whether they work towards pleasure or away from pain. Some people don't know. It's much more than strengths and weaknesses. Some people don't realize their triggers, that they are being emotionally triggered by something. So I think I would say to people, learn to get to know yourself, really get to know yourself and deep dive into self-awareness. And from there, then you can self-regulate. You can see where your weaknesses are, whether it's confidence, whether it's communication. And then you can aim to go in that direction and do something about it.
And how can people get in touch with you?
People can get in touch with me if you type in Krystyna, which is Krystyna, Lennon, on any platform, you'll find me. Or type in Hypnodog and I will come up somewhere in the mix.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing today. And for everyone who's watching or listening, we would love to hear from you. What are your favorite insights from today? So please share it on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And make sure to tag us so we see what resonated with you. Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I publish videos every week that will help you grow on your entrepreneurial journey and that will motivate you to follow through on your dreams. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my new videos.